everyone, and welcome to another episode of Taco Matta Tuesday, the show where we eat healthy, delicious tacos and have conversations about life. Hey, you guys. Welcome back to the podcast. It is Monday evening, 6:36 p.m. I just touched down back in Colorado a few hours ago, and I'm getting unpacked and really excited about this week's episode because I just get to decompress from DEKA World Championships, the amazing trip that I just took, and give you some idea of what it was like to just be behind the scenes of everything that just took place, along with some golden nuggets that came from this weekend that I really want to drive home for those of you that were there this weekend, for those of you that were watching from afar, or even just for those of you that maybe are looking to get into the sport. You just like to listen to the show from week to week just to gain these little valuable nuggets for life. Just really excited to decompress and reflect with you, because this will be the first time that I'll really get the chance to do this is with you guys here from behind the microphone. So before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about the taco of the week. I'll be honest, I had no time whatsoever to whip up a taco for this week, so we're going to pull one from the archives. And from the archives this week, we're going to basically pull what I ate a lot of this week, which was a lot of jelly and a lot of bread. So I'm bringing back the PB&J tacos because these are just delicious and they're great pre-workout, post-workout fuel. Guys, just if you're training hard, if you're getting ready to go into your next phase of a great build for whatever it is that you're going towards next, like, make sure that you're staying fueled. These tacos are a way to absolutely go and do that. So I'll let you guys check those out in the show notes before you leave the episode today. All right, you guys, let's jump on into this magical weekend of DEKA World Championships. So there's so much that I can say. Like, I could probably go on for at least an hour talking about everything that happened, from, you know, what was going on behind the scenes at the house, to all the goofy moments, to just things that are happening during the race, before the race, after it. I mean, it was just nuts. But to spare you a little bit of time, because I know that I don't want to take up a ton of time, I want to get to the things that are going to really matter for you guys to take away, I just decided to break it down race by race, and just really explain some of the things that came from each of those races. For those of you that did not follow along or were not aware, I ended up doing 6 total races this weekend. I did 2 on Saturday, which was the DEKA Mile, and I did a whopping 4 on Sunday, which was the DEKA Strong, which is my specialty. That is where I really rock and roll. And so this weekend I knew was going to be magical because I was in such a different headspace. I physically am stronger than I've ever been before, especially in terms of this sport and this type of racing. So I knew no matter what the outcome was, that this weekend was going to be special for me, because it was going to be the opportunity for me to elevate amongst a group of women that were going to, not forcefully, but that were going to really push me to think about what I'm capable of. And I was really excited about that. Whether I ended up in last place or whether I ended up on the top of the podium, that didn't necessarily matter. I just wanted to go out there and show up 100% as me and not pull back or hold myself back for one moment. I wanted to give what I knew that I was capable of giving for every single race with whatever I had in the tank for that day. And I'd say overall for this weekend, you know, I learned a lot about my capacity to race and handle adrenaline and anxiety and all the things in between. And I came to find that, you know, the races that I had on Saturday definitely did impact me going into my specialty days. And that might have impacted my ability to do things like get on the podium in certain races that I knew that I could do that in. But I would not regret anything for a single moment. And I would just say that for all of the athletes that were there this weekend, do not regret a single thing, because out of everything that you did, there's nothing that you could have lost, but only everything that you could have gained, right? There's always a learning lesson. There's always something that life is trying to teach you. And the beautiful thing about sport, you guys, is that it gives us the opportunity to do this every single day, to learn more about ourselves and about life. So just instead of beating yourself up about maybe doing too many races or not doing enough races or whatever it is that you're beating yourself up over, I hope that you're able to really look at what did come through for you, which is all the things that you're being taught, right, through these experiences that you are giving yourself the chance to actually experience. So that's the first thing I want to say. Let's start off with day one, which was the DEKA mile day. And I started off with the individual race, which was my first ever elite race debut ever at the world championship level. And my whole purpose for wanting to do this race specifically was definitely not to win. In fact, I didn't even think I would come close to a podium, because the women that I was honestly racing against, these women have been doing, some of these women, quite honestly, have been doing cross country, track, like racing in collegiate level sports professionally for anywhere from 10 to 12 years. I barely learned how to start running correctly a few months ago, right? And just even this year, I started really dabbling my foot within the running space. So anything that involved running this weekend, I was already not favored, and that's fine. My thing is I really wanted to go out and get out the jitters of being amongst an elite field and just enjoy it, because the time that I've done the DEKA mile, the one time that I did it by myself in the past, I enjoyed just being out there and floating from station to station, and magically I qualified, right? So going into this, I had no expectation, but I knew that if I played my cards right, that I actually could do pretty well. So I had my game plan, and I'd like to say I definitely stuck to that game plan. And what ended up happening was that I maybe ran a little faster, and I knew that I would, because I was amongst these women that were just pushing you to seek nothing but greatness, right? And I was one of the bottom two for a majority of the race. And for anyone, right, that's hard, especially when you're racing with the best of the world. You're on a live stream. There's announcers talking. There's tons of people watching, both there in person and just from across the world. Like, to be in the bottom two the entire time is not necessarily comfy. Did I care? Quite honestly, no, because I knew where my race was going to really begin, and that was at the bike, and that was my whole strategy. And the really cool thing about this moment for me, you guys, was I've visualized it both for the strong and the mile, but I've visualized this so many times of me getting on the bike and being able to execute in the way that I know how to do it, and then just hearing this roar and being able to come out in such a completely different position. And then from that point, being able to really maximize on the back half, which is what I'm best at. And I got to actually live that moment. I came in, let's see, there were supposed to be 15 of us. I think there was only 13 of us that ended up actually being able to show up to the race just due to different circumstances. And I went into that moment, let's see, I think I was in 11th, and I came out within the top 6. I came out of that station within the top 6. And so the roar of the crowd was freaking awesome. Like, people were celebrating, like the plan was going the way that the plan needed to. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to hang on, and that's totally okay. What sucked is by the time that I got to the tank felt heavier than it's ever felt before, and that could have been to fatigue. That could have been due to the fact that my tank was just not functioning like some of the other tanks were, because there was debacle about that all weekend about how some tanks were definitely not working properly, and that's fine. I honestly don't care. Because here's what happened is I got to the tank, and Dave was right in front of me, in front of my tank lane. And I'm just so happy that he was there, because just seeing his face, it meant the whole world to me. But for God's sakes, I have never wanted to quit more in my life than I wanted to quit in that race. Not because of how I was doing, but because every single part of my body was aching. Like, my legs felt like mush. My heart rate was through the roof. Like, it was a tough end of the race for me. And I was just like, this is way more energy than I wanted to exert, especially at this point, because by the time I got to the tank, I started to get lapped, because again, I was moving a lot slower than I normally do. Had I been moving faster, guys, I probably would have easily broke a top 10 finish, which would have been a huge win for me. I was hoping to get as close to top 5 as possible, but I'm definitely sure I would have broken top 10. And honestly, I came in 11th place, and I was only 10 to 15 seconds behind the 10th place girl. So all being said, I had a great race. But I digress all of that to go back to the main point here, which is I've never wanted to quit more in that race in my entire life. Like, that race hurt a lot. But in that moment, again, going back to some of the race cues that I had planned out ahead of time, and just thinking about the bigger picture in that moment of, I don't need to win this. There is no expectations. It does not matter what other people are thinking about me. None of that matters. I just want to prove to myself in this moment that I can finish. That I can finish with whatever it is that I have left in the tank, because right now that is more important for my mental space than me taking the easy road, which would be quitting, right? And feeling better a couple minutes later. I didn't want to do that. Easy felt like it was the right choice, but for me, I knew that it was not, that it would mentally tear me up all weekend, that I pulled out of a race when I was that close to the finish. And so, for God's sakes, I don't even want to know what my running looked like. I'm so glad I wasn't on the live stream when I was running, that they were focused on the top athletes crossing the finish line. I don't want to know what I looked like, because I knew what it felt like, but it was rough. But I just closed my eyes and I took one step at a time, and I did one burpee at a time, and I crossed that finish line, and I was proud of myself because I finished something where quite literally I did not know physically and mentally that I knew that I had no idea that I could actually do that. Zero. And I was definitely not planning to have a race like that, at least not a race that hurt that bad. So this is what I really want to drive home with you guys, is that race gave me the confidence to show up in all of my future races that weekend, because I knew in that moment, if I could live through that, if I could cross the finish line feeling how I felt in that moment, there was no way that I couldn't cross the finish line in any other race this weekend. And when you are racing the best of the best, and again, the bad wolf comes around, wolf, that's an inside joke. Just never mind it. For Olivia and Dave that are listening, there you go. I finally said it correctly. But when you have those doubts and those negative feelings like coming into your body, just because that's just what we do naturally, that's how we're programmed, like it's really easy. Really, really easy to listen to those and want to throw in the towel. And so I knew that if I threw in the towel at that moment, that those would only intensify. But because I didn't, I was like, forget it. All bets are off now. Like, I can finish anything after I did that. Guys, each and every single race, each and every endeavor that you do does not have to be your top performance. But what you do need to do for yourself is just freaking finish. No matter what that looks like. I don't care what it is in life that you're up against. If you can just find a way to finish, putting one foot in front of the other, it doesn't matter if it takes seconds, days, hours, weeks, whatever. Just find a way to finish for yourself and finish in the strongest way that you possibly can. Okay? So that's my mile race. And after that, I was hurting. And I was like, well, that was not the game plan. So now I knew that that was going to stockpile upon itself and that I was going to field that race, especially going into the next one, which was inevitably a toss-up for the next hardest race that I raced the entire weekend. So up next was DEKA mile teams with world champion Kevin Gregory, my coach. And this is the race, like I was looking forward to the race with Olivia and I and the race with Kevin and I. This was a tie for the top race that I was looking forward to, because I knew that I was going to get pushed and I knew that the competition was going to be fierce and it was just going to be so freaking fun to go fast. Like this race was going to be over in 15 minutes or less. Like just bonkers, okay? I had started to feel a little bit of self-consciousness because on the live stream, if you guys were following along, they said something along the lines during the individual race that I was one of the athletes to watch out for because I was racing with Kevin later that day, and Kevin chooses really good partners. He doesn't just choose them on a whim. He chooses it for a reason. So when you put up a finish like that, you end up in 11th place. It doesn't necessarily inspire much confidence, and people are like, what does this girl actually have to give? So there was a little bit of that coming into my head, but then it was honestly just like, I know what I need to do here, and I also know that this race, it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt a lot, and it's going to be the biggest battle of the weekend. I just need to lean into this and let this take me where it's going to take me. I need to do the best with what I have in the tank. So we take off, and I don't think I've ever ran that fast before in my life. Like, for some of you that ran that race with me, any one of the races in the elite fields, I'm sorry, you guys are nuts. These starting paces are ridiculous. I just don't understand how you guys can do that. My poor little legs. All of that to say, we get into station 1. I fly through the lunges. We were one of the, in the middle of the road for the teams to come into the station first. And then we were one of the first to fly out because my lunges are so freaking fast. Then we get into the row and we're able to, we're kind of battling between the top 3 to 4 teams all through stations 1 through 4. Guys, the shit show that happened between stations 2 and 4 was ridiculous. Okay. Station 2 actually went really well. We hit our paces. I was rowing like a 138 against the men. Kevin gets on, starts ripping like a 120 something. I'm able to run. But after that run, going into the box overs, like going to tag off Kevin for that station, I was in pain already. I was like, oh, we're only on station 3. There's 10 total. This is going to be something. So at that point, I already was starting to not feel great. And when we did this race originally during qualifying, I felt great the entire race. So I was like, this is definitely not going to be one of those moments. So we get through I think we got through the box step overs fairly okay. There was just so much madness happening because the stations were all so close together. The boxes were close together. People were running into each other. Like, it's truly NASCAR when you're doing this race. Like, just watch out in the best way that you can because people are flying into you left and right. You can't stand anywhere really, honestly, without being in someone else's way. So I'm starting to hurt around station 3. We get into station 4 for the med ball sit-ups. There is someone that I can't see that's coming out of the box step over station going into the sit-ups because they finished last out of that station. I'm coming in first, and I go to tag off Kevin, and this girl collides with me and about tackles me and knocks me over. And Kevin starts doing his sit-ups and is livid pissed. Like, there were some choice words that were said, and it was just something. But then it continues with, I've got the baton in my hand, and he gets done and tags me off, and either he tagged the baton and it fell out of my hand, I kicked it out of my own hand. This baton goes nuts, you guys. It goes everywhere. And I'm like, oh dear God. I'm thinking, well, I don't need to grab it. We just need to make sure it makes it to the finish line. I'm just going to adapt and adjust and start running because Kevin can take it to the next station. I did not know that in this particular race, the baton needed to run with you around the whole thing. Didn't understand that because in other races, it's been communicated differently. Anyways, I digress. Kevin comes running after me with this baton. So we just look like a complete crap show in this station. And I'm thinking while I'm running, okay, mentally, I don't know where my partner's at. And for God's sakes, I hope that we're able to pull this together because if we can't pull it together after this point, like mentally, we've already lost this race in station 4. Like we've got to come back together and find our zen and do what we know how to do. And so I get into station 5, Kevin's pulling on the ski and he looks at me and he says, cool as a cucumber. And that has been our mantra for the last couple of months while training because that's what we do is we look like we're cool under pressure and that's what allows for us to excel. And so when he said that, I knew that we were back dialed in, we were back into the race. And from that point, the race went really smoothly. But guys, the amount of effort that was given during that race, the battles that was going on the entire way between me and Katie Duke and Grayson Kilgore, like I have never ran so scared before in my life, knowing that Grayson was on my tail. Like, I wish I saw it. Like, I'm sure it was something. I'm going to get to the point now because I could talk about this race forever. What I want to say about this race is that I had to go to a place that I have never been before. Like, I've been in some pain, but the pain that I felt during this race was insanity. I had to mentally lock in and go to the place where I could not let my body win over my mind. And that is something as a racer that we have to get really comfortable with doing, because none of this ever feels good, right? The better that you can get at doing that is the more you're going to see successful outcomes and see PRs broken, podium finishes, etc. I would have not been able to ever do that alone. I would have never been able to test myself and actually overcome my body and let my mind take over to tell me that I could keep going if I was doing that by myself. I couldn't, right? I had to put myself into these situations with the best of the best in order to elevate to that point. I had to team up with one of the best partners in the world in order to make it happen. Guys, you are so much more capable than you give yourself credit for. We all are. And the only way to counteract that, to counteract the inability sometimes to give ourselves that credit, is to put yourself in the deep end with the people that are going to help push you to get there. So for those of you that are sitting there saying, I am not good enough, I am not qualified, I'm having total doubt in my ability, imposter syndrome, you name it, you need to push that to the side and realize that everything that you've ever wanted is on the other side of discomfort and fear. I talk about this all the time. Put yourself in those situations with the people that are going to push you to elevate, because that is what I was most proud of. We became world champions, and I was so honored to race next to one of my favorite humans in the world, man. But that's what I was most proud of, was like, I pushed to a level that I never thought that I was capable of during that race. And I will never forget that moment because of that. That added a certain level of confidence to not only my race weekend, but just to my life, that you're damn right. I can do this, and I can do this against the best of the best. Watch what I do next because of it. So please don't sell yourself short because you're experiencing imposter syndromes and doubts. Even if you finish last place amongst the field and the best of the best, you still have the guts and the glory to go after it and show yourself that you were capable of it, right? So continue to put yourself in those situations. Now let's fast forward into DEKA Strong. So I had 4 races going into this day. And the first race that I started off with was the DEKA Strong Ruck. This is the race that I could quite literally sleep through. This is what I was looking up as my warm-up race, because just even by pure stats alone, I was 2 minutes ahead of the field with just qualifying times. So I knew that I didn't need to go super hard, that I could use this to my warm-up to the A race that I've been trying and waiting to compete in all dang year, that I didn't need to sell everything in this moment. Well, I woke up after maybe getting an hour or 2 of sleep that night. I barely slept. I had the sweats, like it was just a weird night of being hot and cold because of just the temperature in the house. I'm sure my adrenaline kicked in early, like it just a plethora of things. My stomach was in knots. I couldn't stop shaking. It was terrible. And it didn't even just feel like nerves. I'd felt nerves before the DEKA mile, and I was able to call that out. I don't know what was going on with my stomach, but I felt like I was going to quite literally vomit. And I just remember getting there. I had about 50 minutes before I took off. And I told Dave, I was like, honey, I don't know if I can do this right now. My stomach hurts so bad, and I do not feel myself. I feel so tired and exhausted after getting close to no rest with 2 really hard races yesterday. I don't know if this is smart for me to do this, especially with the elite coming up next, the elite race that I've been working so hard to compete in. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to make the decision now. I've felt, maybe not this bad, but I've felt crappy before certain workouts, just back at home. Once I've started moving, I've typically felt better. So I was like, I'm just going to go to the warm-up area and I'm just going to start moving. I have no plan. I'm just going to get on a machine and just start moving my body in hopes that I'm going to feel better. And if by the end of my warm-up, I feel like crap, then I'll make the final call to pull the plug. So I start warming up, I start doing my thing, and my stomach starts to feel a little bit better. I wasn't 100%, but I was like, you know what? Here's the thing. If I pull out in this moment right now, I know that that's going to impact me if I just decide to completely not try at all, right? Same thoughts that I had during the mile race, that if I was to quit right now, that quitter's mentality was going to follow me into my future races. And I could not do that with less than 2 hours before I was going to do the capstone race of the year. And so I did the thing, and I won the thing, and I earned my very first individual world championship title in that moment. So the important note that quite honestly comes from this is that you do not have to be firing on all cylinders to have success. And nor are you a failure if you only have so much to give. In these moments where you don't feel your best, where you're not 100%, I hope that you can give what you can with what's available and just allow for yourself to trust your training and trust your ability to still dial in when you need to. There was something that I read in the Champion's Mind book the night before I did this race, before I went into the most important day of the weekend. And it said something along the lines of just being able to settle in and allowing yourself to do what you know how to do, what you know how to do best. And I told myself that right before we started, I took a deep breath. I was like, all right, we're going to take this conservatively. We're just going to settle in. And you just have to trust that all of this training that you've done for the last year is going to kick in, and it's going to carry you to the finish line. And that's going to be more than enough, regardless of what that is. And of course, I was able to put up a really great time. I was able to take first. And it started off my day on a high when I was at a pretty darn dang low of a low. So again, just to reiterate, in these moments where you truly don't feel your best and things are not going your way, dig deep to really just find the way to take one step forward, just one. It doesn't have to be the same effort that you gave in the race before, the same effort you were able to give in the last training session. But just find something to say, I'm going to give myself the opportunity to try. And if it just comes out to in that moment where my body is failing me and things are not happening, great. Then I make the decision in that moment, but I'm not going to let myself make the decision before I've given myself the opportunity to try. Okay? So I really hope that makes sense there. All right, here we go. The capstone race of the year, the Elite Strong. So at this point, I've been on the field 3 times, 3 races prior to this. And I just felt so comfortable. I wasn't super nervous. I wasn't feeling a ton of pressure or expectations. I have been so dialed into this race for so long now. And I knew what it is that I needed to do. And I wasn't worried about what anyone else was doing. I was prepared that I would have my strategy and that my body would not be 100%, and I would have to adapt on the fly in certain areas, and that was going to be okay. And that I promised myself in that moment that regardless of whatever you feel, I trust that you're going to make the next best decision in that moment to do what you need to do without selling yourself short. So with the race, the gun goes off, we're going, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm hitting my paces on the first 4 stations. We get to the 5th station of the ski erg, and skiing is I don't have the fast twitch. Like I'm not hitting the same pace, and I'm like, all right, this is it. Like I feel the last couple of races now, here they are, but I'm not going to allow for myself to freak out. So the pace that I originally had planned dropped back about 8 to 10 seconds, and I just kept super cool and super calm. And I knew that I was going to be the last one off the ski erg by a good bit. And that was going to be okay, because that's not where I was going to win my race, but I know that's where I was going to lose my race. So I kept it conservative. I get into the farmer's carry. There's some people that are getting onto the bike by this point. Like some of the very top contenders are starting to finish up their last lap and they're getting on the bike by this point. But again, I don't run this like I normally do. I take like a nice easy trot, and I'm just focused on my heart rate. I'm focused on my heart rate and my mental state, and getting, every bit of that 100 meters done, and taking one big deep breath as I run across towards the bike, getting my perfect seat setting up, taking a big deep breath before I press start. And again, just merely focusing on RPMs, execution, all the things that I need to do, saying, hey, calm is strong. You could be calm and strong at the same time, etc. I do what I need to do on the bike. Was it the same picture perfect moment that I visualized? No, it wasn't. Did I hit the bike split that I wanted to? No, I was about 15 seconds slower than the original split that I wanted to hit. But the magic is what that came after that is what I am so stoked on. I don't know how, I don't know where, but all of a sudden this second gear hit hard. And it was in the best way possible. And I started chucking that ball over my shoulder and I was flying through these reps. And then I was on the tank and I felt the best that I felt on the tank the whole entire weekend. And I'm running to these burpees and there is no thought in my mind about slowing down the pace. I'm thinking we are ripping through these 20s burpees. Like, this is it, right? I'm letting everything go in this moment and we are just going to sell out for ourselves right now. And here's the special thing about this moment is that in the last couple of sims that I've done for the DEKA Strong race, both for the ruck and for the individual elite, I had to stop in the middle of my burpees and catch my breath multiple times because I couldn't breathe. And granted, that could have been due to sickness, to altitude and elevation, or me freaking myself out, putting too much pressure on myself. There's so many things that could have happened, but that's been in my head. And so to show up and turn on the second gear and probably have one of the fastest burpee splits that I have had in my entire season in that moment and run across the finish line. Guys, I was so proud. I did not care where I ended up. I was just so proud of how I finished that race and realizing I've still got so much potential in what I can do in this race and in this upcoming season. I came in about 10 seconds after the 5th place girl. I almost cracked top 5 in my very first elite DEKA Strong race. And had I not done maybe one of the races before, had I not done the DEKA mile race, the individual, the day before, there's a large chance I probably could have done it because the fatigue was definitely piling on, but I didn't care. Because again, after all of that, I was able to show up in that way and just build this unwavering confidence in myself to do things when, holy cow, things get hard. So while I didn't get the result that I was originally hoping for, I was definitely hoping to crack top 5 in some capacity. It didn't matter because I raced the most authentically to me, and that felt so good. Maybe this weekend you didn't get the result that you were so confident in getting, the result that you wanted, but I encourage you to go back and relive those moments that did happen for you. Those moments where you felt like you were in control and you were alive, because you were so authentic to who you were as a person and as a racer. If you're struggling to see those moments, well, friends, there's your biggest area of opportunity, right? Is we're focusing too much on what didn't happen versus not focusing on what did happen for you, right? So go back through and focus on all the wins that did happen, and you're going to be quite shocked and quite proud of what you did. So please, please, please don't lose that skill as you move forward in any of your endeavors in your life, to focus on what's happening for you, not necessarily what's not happening for you. Alrighty, moving into female teams. Oh, this was so fun. So I didn't explain this one yet. So after I got done crossing the finish line for the ruck, my girl Olivia, I've coached her since the beginning of this season, and we were racing later that day in the elite female strong teams. Her race just took off. So I was sad that I couldn't be with her every single moment, but she got to hear me cross first, and that gave her everything that she needed to go out there and execute for herself. It gave her that right juju. She looked incredible. She was on the farmer's carry. So I finally got off my butt and went and cheered her on. And during the farmer's carry, like, I can tell when someone's going to win the race or when they're going to PR. I can tell when something magical is going to happen because you could see it in your posture. You could see it in your face. You can see the whole thing. And I knew in the farmer's carry that she won that race, that she was going to win that race. And I just needed to be there with her and have her remind her that she could hang on. She got on the bike. She ripped that shit to shreds. She got on the ball. She was moving consistently. She has moved that tank better than I've seen her move it before. And it all came down to the burpees for her. I knew that if she could go straight through on the burpees, that she was going to win it. She got to the burpees first. And 3 reps in, someone else came to join her. And I was like, all right, dude, we got to move. But all of that to say, she ended up coming across the finish line as a world champion in her very first year of racing DEKA ever. And so as a coach in that moment, when you get to watch someone that you care so much about, that you've seen them work relentlessly towards their craft, and you just love them, right? When you get the opportunity to have that moment, like that was the biggest highlight of the entire weekend. So like after we shared that moment of that embracing hug and just getting to celebrate all that she's been through and what she just accomplished, we were firing on all freaking cylinders by that point for when we were ready to do our female teams race. So I knew that regardless of what happened, that we were going to have a ton of fun. So it honestly was all such a blur, and we just let ourselves flow because we've done this race so many times together in the last couple of months. And for God's sakes, there was a lot of debate of what was going on. There's video footage of so many poor reps, and these people happen to make it on the podium and la da da da. Like, there's people that are saying that we should have gotten second place because the people that did. I mean, guys, there was a lot that was going on. I focus on zilch of that because at the end of the day, you can't control what results are going to happen. You just can't. You could run the best race of your life and the results will still never fall in your favor. There's too much that you can't control. So stop worrying about that. What you need to focus on is what you can control, which is what you choose to focus on. I know it's easier said than done because in that moment, we crossed the line in 3rd place. We got a podium spot. We had the best race in our entire career together. Like, we PR'd our time. We saw the potential of like, okay, this is where we're going to get faster and how we're going to actually be maybe one of the first female teams to go sub 10 one day. Like, it's so much easier said than done when you had a really good race and you got to celebrate the wins on top of a podium. But even if the results were different, I got to race with one of my favorite humans and someone that I got to witness take a world championship title at her first Worlds ever. Just getting to share space with her and be in such an electric energy together was a gift. So yet again, this is just another reminder to not forget all that went right just because there were some things that went wrong and there were some things that were completely out of your control. And this actually perfectly leads me into the last race of the entire weekend. I got to race with another one of my favorite humans, guys. I have a lot of favorite humans. I'm very blessed in my life to have a lot of favorite humans. But I got to race with my buddy AJ. And I knew that at this point, I just wanted to let it rip with him. Like, there's nothing else after this. I want to give everything left that I possibly have in my body with a person that just makes me so joyful and happy all the freaking time. Well, we were in a good headspace to go out there and, really ruffle some feathers. And then everything that could have probably went wrong just about went wrong in that race. We had a fumble with the road transition where he couldn't get his foot out. And that's always, you feel bad, you're freaked out, it spikes your heart rate, it takes your mental space into the wrong space. We had he had some sort of fumbling going on the box. We get to the ski erg. Our ski erg breaks. We're skiing with one handle. Guys, I'm telling you, each station was some sort of new debacle that we had to deal with. And honestly, that was probably one of the most informative races of the entire weekend for both him and I. It was probably the race that should be the one that we delve the most into and take the most away from, even though for both of us, it was probably one of the worst races that not only we've ran together as a team, but it was one of the worst races that we each individually ran during our whole race weekend. What that moment showed us is our ability to adapt. It showed us how adaptable we are when circumstances are not going right. And that, quite honestly, that this was the race that we needed as individual athletes to show us that we can still pull together a phenomenal race despite the circumstances. And now that's something that we can store in our confidence bank for later when we decide to race again, or race with other people, or just attempt anything that is not going in our favor in the future. Sometimes you don't get the race that you want, but you will get the race that you need. So dig deep on how that race is going to build you. Dig deep in this moment right now to really think about, why is life throwing this curveball my way? Why did things not go the way that I wanted them to go? What is the ultimate lesson that I can gain here in this moment that's going to help build me into the athlete that I ultimately want to be? And this is going to take me into one of the most special moments that I had the opportunity to share. It's also one of the toughest moments at the same time. So while I was in the recovery center, I got the opportunity to watch my coach, Kevin, go and try and defend his world championship title. And I felt pretty confident that he was going to win again. Like, I felt like everyone knew that it would be hard for him to not win, but anything could quite honestly happen. Long story short, he ended up taking third place. And watching all of this occur, like, my heart just dropped. It dropped into the pit of my stomach for him. Because when you have, I have such a great relationship with him, and we talk about so much when it comes to not only just DEKA and racing, but just in life, that when you care about someone that much and you watch something like that happen, like, oh my God, my heart was just broken. And I knew at some point that I wanted to talk to him and decompress with him, but I didn't want to do it then. I knew the right moment would come. And so I'm sitting in the recovery center and I'm getting prepared for my last two races. And Kevin comes walking into the recovery center and sits down next to me, pulls up a chair, and just looks at me. And I say nothing. I just smile. And I'm inviting him to just say whatever he needs to say. I'm just here to listen and be an ear. And Jess is with him. And he starts talking and picking apart different parts of the races and things that didn't go his way and things that were frustrating and all the good stuff, right? And I said, I just want to tell you one thing. And I told him, this moment is going to build you. And Jess lost it in that moment. She started bawling, pulled her hoodie over her face, and just started crying. And I saw Kevin's eyes started to water up and well up. And I said, this moment, Kevin, is going to build your future. It is one small bump in your story to greatness, like in your entire journey to greatness. This is going to be the thing that you look back on and you make a decision to become even more great than you are today because you chose to not give up, to not let one moment of not being able to defend your title stop you from continuing to go on this rampage that you've been on in the last year. And I said, to continue this, you have to look so much more than beyond the results that just happened. Look at the fact that I actually got the opportunity to live out my dream today because of what you did, because of what you built, because of how you made me feel a year ago in this stadium, in this World Championship event, where you poured belief into me that I could be something great. And look at what happened today. I got to live my dream. And better yet, I also got to give that gift to someone else and watch her live out her dream and becoming a world champion too. The reach that you have had, the impact that you have had on changing so many people's life goes way further than any podium or any race result will ever go. So please do not forget that in this moment, that last year, even 2 years ago, you had maybe 10 people on this team and you came in with like 40 underdogs, stoked to be there, sweeping PRs and podiums left and right. You did that. You built that. Never forget that just because there was one day, one race where you weren't able to put together the pieces and someone else was able to. It could have been anyone's race that day. It just happened to not be yours. And that's okay. But don't you ever forget what you've built and what's more important here, which is the lives that you've changed, including my own. And he just like dropped whatever sandwich or whatever he had in his hand, and we just hugged and told him how much I loved him and how much I'm just so proud of him for still fighting through that. And guys, when you are a world champion and you show up and you try to defend a title, the expectation and the pressure that you put on yourself and that you feel from other people to go and do a repeat is absurd. Like, I can't even imagine the way that he felt leading up to this. So I hats off to you, Kevin, for just even attempting to do that again, right? And at the end of the day, it could have just been the pressure. It could have been the expectations that got you. And that's okay, because you live and you learn. And just like I said, you are now going to have the greatest opportunity of a lifetime to go and rewrite the script and become better for next year's season, okay? This is where I want to end you on this podcast. Success is not defined by the number of podiums that you stand on top of, but rather by the reach of your impact. Success is knowing that you gave every ounce of what you had in the tank in that race and stayed true to who you are throughout the entirety of it. I am so confident in saying that this weekend I impacted more people with my smile and my contagious energy throughout every single race and the perseverance I demonstrated than I ever did with the titles that I won, that I took home. I encourage each of you to think about how you were able to inspire people to keep going and recognize that that alone is the real win. Thank you guys so much for showing up for you today, and I hope that this episode was truly impactful. If it was, please be sure to send this to friends and family members that need to hear this message, especially for those of you that race this weekend that need to send a little love to someone that maybe didn't have the race weekend that they wanted. But guys, again, thank you so much for supporting my entire DEKA journey this season. What an incredible season. I'm not going to get teary-eyed right now because we're at the end. But I am truly so excited for what next season brings for me and so many of you that I will have the opportunity to coach. If you've listened to this and if you have been able to really resonate with the things that I say, the way that I view things, the way that I show up as a coach, please do not hesitate to reach out to me to get me into your corner from a training perspective, because I would love to help elevate you into the 2025 season. You can go to the show notes again before you leave the episode today to contact me and fill out that form to start working with me going into the new season. But again, thank you guys for showing up for you, and I'll see you guys next week for a new episode of Taco About It Tuesday. See you then.